All right, there we go. I'm like, why is it not popping up for me? Well, hello everyone out there in the great land of all that good streaming stuff. Welcome to the MCU's Bleeding Edge. Tonight we have decided to talk a little bit about the Batman movie for you guys. We're gonna do our actual Batman review for you guys. We've been sitting on this actually since we saw it about 2 weeks ago now, and we decided we'd do that for you guys tonight. A little break from the MCU, greatness that we do and all that kind of good stuff. So we'll give you a break from the Infinity Saga, and we'll get back to that. Actually, next week we'll be starting with Moon Knight. So hopefully you guys can stop on by and talk about that Moon Knight. Woo! So, anyways. Mr. Jeff has taken the night off tonight, and I am filling in for him as moderator, if you can't tell. It's just a twosome tonight, me and Mr. Arch Stanton, who you might recognize from the podcast of Champions.
Howdy,
Great
guys.
to have you, Arch.
I know I'm actually looking forward to this. I always love Jeff on, but this is a new dynamic. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, this is gonna be fun. So yeah, we're gonna have an interesting little night for you guys, just the two of us. This is the first time I've seen a twosome on the MCU's Bleeding Edge for once. Usually it's several of us, but tonight we're just gonna be doing two. So this is gonna be interesting. So anyway, so like we said, we're gonna be talking about the Batman. As you can see in my background there, you got the Batman going there. And this movie is actually directed by Mr. Matt Reeves, and he did a fantastic job with this. So let's just start off with giving our overall kind of just our opinion about it. I'll start off, and then you can come in, Arch.
Yeah, sounds
And
great. Yeah.
and so just to kind of give my little take on it, from what I've only seen it one time in theaters so far. I do plan on wanting to see it eventually soon again. Hopefully, it'll probably be on HBO Max when it gets launched, but. Anyways, I feel this movie is really well done. I enjoyed pretty much every aspect about this film except for the very beginning part. I felt it was a little slow getting into the film, but once it got into the meat of the film, it became one of the best, like, detective noir type of films I've ever seen. And the action, the acting by all involved, the narration by all, just was really fun and really inspiring, I thought, and just a really great new take on a Batman film. I thought Paul Dano was absolutely my most favorite character in the whole film. I loved him as the Riddler. I thought he was fantastic. Even though Andy Serkis wasn't in it very much as Alfred, I still enjoyed his take on Alfred. I thought he did a pretty decent job. Jeffrey Wright was awesome as Gordon. He was not Commissioner Gordon yet at this time. He was just still a detective, so that was kind of nice to see that kind of era of Gordon, which we already kind of got a little bit of that with the show Gotham that was on the CW. But it was nice to see another take on it. Colin Farrell's The Penguin was amazing too as well. I really enjoyed him. I thought he did a great job, and I'm looking forward to seeing his Penguin spin-off series that they're going to do for HBO. And Zoe Kravitz, she was an interesting and different Catwoman. I'm still hugely partial to Michelle Pfeiffer as Catwoman. She's kind of always been my favorite. I thought she did the best version of Catwoman, besides, of course, I always enjoyed Eartha Kitt, and I can't remember the other actress' name that played her on the Batman TV series, but I always enjoyed their takes on it, too. I'm not a fan of the Anne Hathaway version. I thought that was really horrible. I thought, actually, Zoe was a little better than her. But I actually was really surprised how small of a part actually the Catwoman was in this. I thought she was going to have a lot more screen time from what the trailer showed. So I was really surprised by that. And I think it played well because it didn't overdo it for her character. So I really enjoyed that too as well. But that's pretty much my overall opinion. I thought it was really well done, really fun. And I thought it's a really great addition to the Batman universe. Your thoughts, Arch?
Yeah. So I'm gonna echo a lot of that. I don't want to retread a ton of it. But I'm not quite as hype on you. I'll just start off with that sort of preface. But I'm trying to figure out where to go here, honestly. I mean, I think they did a great job. I think, as you mentioned, all the acting's great. I loved Serkis. I loved Jeffrey Wright as Gordon. I'm a big Jeffrey Wright fan. I'm a Bond fan. I'm a Westworld fan. Jeffrey Wright's been in both of those. I think he's just a fantastic presence on screen, so I think he's amazing. But everybody did a good job here. I thought Pattinson as Batman was good, and I am coming in as not a Pattinson fan, and you probably know what that means, but I'm just not a super big Pattinson fan. I'm sorry, I'm just not. But I thought he did a great job as Batman, honestly. I thought he did really good. Um, I'll mention that I'm not quite sold on Bruce at this point, but that's not really Pattinson. What that is like, I think that the series hasn't evolved Bruce yet. I think they're starting at a certain level. And while I'm not into this Bruce, I think that sequels could probably get to a level where, I think they're taking his character somewhere, basically, is what I'm saying. So I think they're going to go somewhere else with that, which is fine. It's okay to evolve the character. So I think that's going to be good. Penguin's just amazing. I mean, Colin, he's unrecognizable. I mean, some of that is makeup, but also his acting is just off the charts. I think it's really, really interesting. And I've always thought of Colin as actually a really underrated, great actor. I don't think he gets quite enough credit as he deserves, and I think he did a really good job in this role. Zoe was very serviceable. I've got a few details about her character that I wasn't quite sure about as we go through, but we'll talk about that. But it just, as her presence in the film was good, and her acting was fine, and everything was good. I mean, I think the film looks great, right? Like, it obviously looks really good throughout the entire thing. Now, so I think it's a good film. I think it's a very good entry into the Batman mythos, or just the history of Batman on film. I think it's solid. I will just give some personal biases here, just a little bit, is that I'm just a little Batmaned out. I mean, we've had a lot of Batman at this point, so I'm not. I didn't go into this film feeling an itching need to see more Batman, so it was always going to be a little challenging for me to feel like super excited about this, because I've already had a lot of super exciting Batman moments. But they did a great job with it nonetheless, so it's good regardless. If this was your first Batman film, you probably had a completely different experience than I did. So I think that it stands on its own merits there. I'm a little reverse of you, so I actually enjoyed the slower start. It was the ending that got me a little bit, like, not super hyped, but we'll talk about that more, I'm sure, later. But overall, yeah, it's definitely a good technical film. I would say I don't know if I find it all that entertaining on the whole, but we'll get to some of those points as we go through, I'm sure.
All right. Okay, awesome. Yeah. So I mean, to kind of go back on what you were saying, yeah, how you like the slow burn at the beginning and the ending. Yeah, definitely the ending was a little slow too for me as well. But because I was so hyped about what was in the middle, it got me through it a lot easier than that beginning part.
I'm actually really curious about what excites you the most about it as we go through. I'm sure we'll get there, but I'm really curious.
Yeah. So I mean, kind of to kind of go with that, what excites me about it was just, I mean, the dynamic of Dano and the dynamic of Farrell and all those characters just working so well together in the film. And just this great different rendition on those characters from, like you were saying, you're kind of Batmaned out because we've had so many Batman films in the last, like, 10 years.
Right.
And so, between the Dark Knight trilogy and then, between Batman versus Superman, Justice League, all those and stuff like that we've had a lot of Batman. So it's like, the urge for a Batman film was kind of, like you were saying, it's not really necessarily needed really at this point because it hasn't been very long without one. So the just liking that, those dynamics of that different visualization and different acting points that they brought to this film for this version of the Riddler, this version of the Penguin. A lot of people I've noticed have said that they liked how Colin Farrell's Penguin was a lot different than Danny DeVito's Penguin or Burgess Meredith's Penguin. It was more like he was a gangster. He wasn't like this monster that, they kind of played him in previous things, and not as campy. He was a lot more, we'll say, realistic seeming versus what we've seen in the past. So
Right.
those type of things in this film made it so enjoyable, and then just the pace of how they had that middle section of the film, I should say, it just seemed very like boom, boom, boom for me, and I like that. I like it when a film is very smooth and getting to the point in the action and to the storyline and stuff like that, and that's how it made me feel, and that's probably what excites me the most about this film. Really, it was just Dano and Farrell's being in this film. That's what excited me the most about this film, and that proved to me, when I saw this film, they made it the best that I could have imagined, and that's why I really enjoyed this film. It's talk about a little bit about Pattinson. You know, like you were saying, you're kind of like we're not really high up on his Bruce. We understand there's a little bit of difference that his Bruce is supposed to be. We know that this is supposed to be only his second year as Batman, and that he's kind of still dealing with all the tragedy of his past and kind of deal like that and stuff. And I do recall somebody mentioning, or in an article. I don't know if you've seen this article or not, but they were saying that they based his look and his like presentation on Kurt Cobain, which
Really?
I have no idea why, but that's what basically the person said in the article, is that if you ask Matt Reeves or the writers of the story, they said that they based this version of Bruce Wayne on Kurt Cobain.
I have heard that Pattinson is a Nirvana fan, and I know they had the Nirvana soundtrack obviously in there. So I mean, I could believe it. I could see that. I don't think he looks like Kurt Cobain, to be honest. But
No, no, I don't think he looks like him either. No, no, no. But let's go into a question there a little bit about Pattinson, like you have mentioned earlier. Like I have mentioned previously in my other videos and stuff I've done, that I wasn't keen on Pattinson being Batman.
Right.
I didn't think he was gonna be right for the role.
Right.
And he actually, after seeing the film, he did better than I thought he was going to.
Right.
So my overall, I would give him like a 5 out of 10 for his performance in this. Where originally I was thinking more of like a 1 out of 10.
Oh wow.
What about you? What were your thoughts after seeing him as the Batman? Like, did you have a feeling like a rating, or if just like what was your overall take?
I thought he did really good as Batman. I always have trouble with ratings and scales and stuff like that. But I mean, I thought he did really good. I was completely sold on his Batman. I will tell you that. And I didn't really expect to be. Just a little history. I mean, I'm coming from the I don't care about Twilight stuff, and that's like what he's primarily known for. So it was really hard to get over that. I did have a guy on our site. I'll give him a little plug here. Haunted Knight. If he's ever watching this. Talked me into watching him. I was discussing with him on Sakar one day. All right, give me one film. Just give me a film of Robert Pattinson's to go watch that might sell me on him, the idea of him being Batman. And Good Time was the film he wound up giving me. So I saw Good Time, and Pattinson's good. I don't know. It didn't really get me like 100% across the line on him, but it did help me see Pattinson in a new light, a little more serious light. And I think that probably helped, to be honest. So if he's ever watching this, thanks, Ben. So
plug to Ben.
Yeah. So Haunted Knight, he's a guy on our site. He's been there for a long time. So if you're ever on Sakara, you'll find him. But yeah, it did help. Honestly, it really did. So yeah, no, I really did buy Pattinson as Batman when he's in the suit, when he's acting as Batman, when he's talking to Catwoman or Penguin or anybody else. Like, I do buy it. Like, I totally buy it. I think he's really good in the role. I hesitate to go best or worst or anything like that, but because I've liked a lot of them, but he's good in the role. The only thing, and this really isn't a Pattinson thing, I don't think, because I think he was intentionally playing like a really moody Bruce Wayne. I'm just not. I don't care about moody Bruce Wayne right now. Like, not that I don't care, but I would like him to get to, Playboy, running his company, CEO Bruce Wayne, and not I don't give a shit about anything Bruce Wayne. So I think that's the part I think they can get to, and he could probably play that role. I would just like to see that and not moody emo Bruce Wayne, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. A lot of people, I noticed when the trailer came out, a lot of people were saying that, like, what's with this emo Bruce Wayne and stuff like that. And I remember thinking to myself, I'm like, yeah, he kind of does look a little emo in that first trailer that they showed. And I was kind of laughing. He does. I was kind of cracking up. I was like, yeah, he kind of does look a little. And I'm like, I wonder if there's like a underlying theme about that. And now that, all those people have come out saying, oh, the Kurt Cobain thing, I'm like, oh, okay, I can see that. All right. I get it, maybe.
Yeah, it's not like it doesn't make sense. It does make sense, kind of given the story. I just want to see him. I want to see him get over it. If they're going to keep going with the series, I want to see him get over that.
Yeah, most definitely. But yeah, overall, I thought Pattinson did a good job. I thought he was Batman, and I thought he looked really good in the suit too.
He does, yeah.
I think he filmed it out very well, and I think that they had a really interesting design with his suit in the film as
Right.
well versus any other that we've seen. So that was nice to see too as well. So kind of moving on with it. So like if for those that have seen it or haven't seen it, block your ears if you haven't seen it. Anyways, if the movie kind of starts out interesting because it's kind of like a intro, uh, kind of like into Gotham a little bit, and you get like your kind of your first picture of Batman in that dark alleyway. And I thought it was kind of an interesting way of introducing him into the film, actually, because, like, I remember that kind of was like, if you watch the trailer, it's kind of like in the middle of the trailer, towards the end of the trailer, that they showed that scene. So it was kind of nice to see that this was actually at the beginning of the film, and you're not actually, the trailer wasn't like split up like how the movie actually plays out. But that first scene where he comes out walking out of the alleyway in the dark, and you hear the footsteps, and they kind of have that throughout the whole movie. They have his footsteps, how they sound, and I thought that was kind of an interesting take. I don't know what your take on it, but I thought it was kind of funny. Not purposely, but I just found it kind of funny how it sounded. Like it just seemed like too thuddy for me for like an actual boot to be walking in. Yeah, so I don't know. What were your thoughts on that? Did you get a crack up out of it at all, or did you think that it worked out well for those moments?
I guess I thought it was fine. I think the moment that sort of stood out to me, I can see what you're saying about it cracking you up. The moment that stood out to me was when the guy's got the bomb, right? And he comes up in the what is it, a church? I'm not sure where it is, but like where the car, after the car crashes in, and
Yeah, I think it's a church. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And so he's walking up, and that was that was the moment where it occurred to me that it was kind of like the same thing from like the very beginning of the film. I didn't laugh at it, but like I was like, okay, they're going with this slow dramatic entrance thing, and that's like they're clearly mirroring this throughout the entire thing.
Yeah.
I don't know, I guess I didn't have much of a reaction to it, but I realized that that's what they were doing.
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, I thought it was kind of funny. Like, it kind of stuck in my head throughout the whole film too.
It did stick in my head, yeah.
Which was kind of funny. I was like, "That's interesting. Why is this like so stuck in my head?" But it was always so. I thought it was kind of funny. But that scene right there, I think, is a really great action sequence. Him taking on all those thugs, and I thought it was kind of a good introduction to him showing his fighting style for the time. After only been doing this for 2 years, and just kind of how he kind of differentiated himself, how he fought between other Batmans too as well. So I thought that was kind of an interesting take. And just I thought the whole scene was just really interesting because that the one thug that kind of is still there right at the end, and he's like basically ends up running away and doesn't get beat up by Batman. Yeah, did you have some?
Oh, yeah. So that made me think, because this didn't come up in our review before. But first of all, I liked how that got set up. There's a couple things I didn't talk about that I wanted to in our review, but I did really like how they set up multiple different villains. There was a guy that like had just robbed a store. There was some other sort of villain that had done something, some other minor criminal that had done something else, and then there was this gang. And they kept flashing between them, and the all three of the groups, the villain people, were worried about Batman coming out of the shadows somewhere. And then you didn't really, as an audience member, know exactly what was going to happen. I mean, I guess if you'd seen the trailer, you probably knew, but like it ends up being that gang. But so I thought that was cool how they flashed between them, showing like different people all worrying about Batman, but he can only get to one. So, and it winds up being that one. So I thought that was an interesting little thing, that like people can be worried about something that isn't going to ultimately get to them. So I thought that was kind of cool. The one thing I was thinking about with the guy with the half of his face painted, and I thought this at the end. It wasn't until the end of the movie, but they kind of focus on him, right? But then and spoilers, he never comes back up throughout the whole film. So I thought that was interesting. I did have somebody point out to me that in one of the DC shows, and full disclosure, I don't watch a lot of DC programming. Sorry, but apparently the same actor plays a Batman character, probably like Robin or something, or I don't know, one of the spin-off Batman characters in one of the shows. I don't know if that means this actor is going to be that in this series or not, but
Oh.
I thought it was interesting that he never comes back up in the film. So if he is, it's kind of a little bit of an odd tie-in to not focus on him a little bit more than that. But whatever, like, I just
Hmm.
thought that was interesting.
I did not know that. Thank you for that little tidbit there that he's in one of the shows.
Yep.
Um, but yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I wonder if he will be back in a later because there was a very significant like specific look to him that made him stand out. I agree there too as well
Right.
in that scene. Um, but I mean, there's so many interesting scenes in this film. I just recall like so many like really awesome action sequences. I remember some interesting like key interpersonal like conversations that in the film and so forth and stuff like that. And to talk about like kind of the mood setting that they had at the club that we end up going to a few times throughout the film, where Falcone is and where Penguin is and where all the seedy underlying people go to do what they need to and so forth. And I thought that was a really kind of cool atmosphere, very gangster feeling, very almost like club feel too as well, along with that gangster feel. So I guess like what were your thoughts on just like that whole like construction of that scene? Like what did you think about the club? Did you like that they went there? Did you like that that's where uh you know uh where these people laid? Did you think that was a good like addition to this film versus like any other film that they've done in the Batman films? Because I feel like this is something newer. I don't recall there being kind of like these underground like club scene in any of the other Batman films. Like they've had their layers and stuff, but I don't feel like they've had like something like this. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, it's funny you mentioned that about it not like feeling like some other things they did, because I feel like it did, but it may just be me. And here's what I'm talking about. This is going to be a bigger idea. My sort of conclusion after watching this is it feels. I always thought The Dark Knight Rises, by the way, felt a little disjointed from the rest of the Nolan series. I felt like they skipped something. Like there was an 8 year gap. I felt like maybe there was an opportunity, and this film as a whole felt like what they skipped. I feel like this film would have fit pretty nicely with some small modifications into as the third film in that series. Um, but if you remember in the Nolan series, there was a club that Maroni, it was Maroni, not Falcone. I get those confused a little bit, but there was a club that Maroni hung out at. It was a little more techno. Like they had a lot of techno music playing in there, where Bale actually went in there, beat up a bunch of guys, and like holds up Falcone with like Maroni. I'm sorry, with one hand, and that was in that scene. So it felt similar to that to
Yeah.
me. Like it could have, it was a similar type of club, or it could have been the same club with some small modifications or something. But it felt kind of like that to me.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I totally
I like.
totally don't remember that scene, but now that how you explained it and everything, now I'm like, "Oh yeah, that is in the Dark Knight Rises." I'm like, but it's been forever since I've seen that one because I just there's so many movies.
Yeah,
But
of course, yeah.
you
It,
know,
it, just to be specific, it was right before. So if you remember the scene where he drops Falcone off at like the second floor and he breaks his legs, and Falcone,
yeah.
it's Falcone, says, "I won't die from here," and he's like, "I'm counting on it," and he drops him and he breaks his legs. It was right before that scene where he's broken into the club. Yeah,
Oh,
yeah, yeah.
that's right. That's
Right.
right. Yeah,
Right.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's a great scene.
Mhm.
I know a lot of people hate on The Dark Knight Rises, but I thought it was a pretty decent film. Even though, like you were saying, it is disjointed and everything like that, it does feel that way a little bit
Right.
and seems different than the other series. I still think I think it's a decent film. Anytime I've watched it, I've always enjoyed it. So,
Right.
I think that's a testament. But that's interesting that I didn't piece those two together in the similarity here. So yeah, that's a great little take on there. Very much so. Um, Now you were mentioning earlier that there was some things that you discussed in your guys's podcast on the Podcast Champions. that you wanted to mention. So why don't you go ahead and do that?
Throughout the entire film or any particular part at all?
Whatever you would like to talk about.
Ooh, wow, I just open-ended here. Okay.
Yes, open ended for you. Yes, sir.
All right, let me think about it. We were generally discussing the overall attempt to do something. A big thing that came up was the idea that they've really taken the idea of grounding this particular series, the Pattinson Batman, in a lot of reality. For instance, the Penguin is, as you discussed just a minute ago, he's like a gangster. He's not all that dissimilar from Falcone or Maroni. He's a guy, right?
Mm-hmm.
So can you see this Penguin, whipping out like an umbrella that has some kind of ability to it? Yeah, can you see him having Danny DeVito type umbrellas? I don't know. Where can you see this series going? Like, can they do a Clayface with this series? Can they do a Poison Ivy with this series? Can they do a Mr. Freeze with this series? I'm actually really curious about that because I think they did a really good job of doing a procedural crime drama with this series, but I don't know where they don't know where they go with this, and I'm curious about that. It makes me curious, and worried's not the proper term, but I am interested to see how they can pull something else off. And I might even compare it to early MCU films because I remember I was discussing with a guy I refer to as Max. You've had him on his show. Your show is by David, but he and I were discussing. He and I were discussing this earlier. Like, how can you do certain characters more realistic? He was thinking like Mad Hatter, maybe in a future spinoff, or not a spinoff, in a future sequel. Like, can you do those characters in a realistic way and have them come off? The big thing that we were all discussing, though, as it pertained to this film, was the ending. And I don't know if you want me to go there quite yet, but the ending came up quite a lot in our review in terms of how it played into the overall narrative. Do you want me to bring that up now, or what do you think?
You can, sure. Why not?
Okay.
I don't see any reason why not.
Okay, yeah, good deal. I just didn't want to like break whatever form you had here, but
No.
So
we're winging it here. We're winging it.
Winging it's good, man. I like it. So we kind of generally felt that the ending with the water plot, like where all the like, so you get down, the Riddler's killed a bunch of corrupt people, and you can almost the way he's done it, or at least his motivations, you can almost side with him. These people are corrupt. You get it, right? Like you can at least understand what his motivations. Maybe you don't agree with his actions, but you can at least see how he got there, right? But then the film kind of does a thing where Batman meets Riddler in prison, and Riddler does this thing where he says, "You haven't figured it out yet. Like there's a big riddle left to go." And he gets the carpet. Batman goes back, reevaluates the carpet tool, figures out that it's a map, and it leads him to this video, which basically tells him exactly what the Riddler's plan is, which is to flood Gotham. And I don't know how you feel about that. It seemed, at least to me, and this is where I kind of question the film a little bit, to be a massive escalation in what he was doing. Because up until that point, he'd been essentially just an assassin of a handful of corrupt, politicians or, civic leaders of some type. And then all of a sudden, at least for me, Gotham, the entire city is built under the water line or something, and there's this previously unmentioned ability to just, it's not like it was hinted at, right? Like it's not like you were teased that, oh, the city's underwater or something like that, and this might be a potential problem. Just all of a sudden he can flood the city and the city's flooded. So I found that to be, at least for me, to be a little jarring and a little bit of an escalation from the Riddler going from an assassin of a few individuals to burying the whole city in water. Did you see where I'm coming from, or did that just roll smoothly for you?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, yeah, I thought that was kind of interesting too. Like, as I was watching the film, and the ending comes up and the whole water thing, I was thinking to myself, I'm like, I didn't realize Gotham was surrounded by so much water. I,
Right.
I and I also didn't realize that they had all these levees that were protecting them from being mashed by water. So I don't know if that's some creative differences that they decide to interject to make it different than the other DC universe itself, to kind of change it up and to go that way. That's the only thing I can think of that, like, as I was watching, I was kind of pondering that, like, why would they go this route? Why would they drench Gotham in water and basically flood it? And, like, I was like thinking to myself, just like I said, I don't recall there being that much water around it. And, like, they didn't there was no, like, previous part in the film where they suggested that or anything, like you were saying too, as well. So I definitely was on the same wing, like, as you. But then I started pondering, like, why would they decide to make it like this way? And the only thing I could think of, that's what kept popping in my head, was like, oh, they want to differentiate it from the other DC Batmans to give it a differentness. Because I remember a lot of critics, or a lot of people that have, like, mentioned and talked about the film, have said that this is not supposed to be attached to the DCU at all. Like, this is
Right.
supposed to be its own separate thing. So I think that's what you got to think of. What this is doing is that it's a completely different universe, and that's why this Gotham is so different than the Gotham we're used to. So I
Right.
think that's what it's going with. And that's what I came out thinking.
Yeah, no, and I totally get that, and I actually have no problem with like a completely different version of something. I think my thing was just in story. It felt like it kind of came out of nowhere, just in the story, like. And it's odd. It's a hard thing if you're writing something. You don't want to telegraph something. You don't want to just be sitting there focusing on, hey, there's these levees, and like as the audience member, you're like, well, clearly these are gonna break. Like so it's a hard balance to strike if you're a writer. It's just as an audience member, I was kind of sitting there like, wait, the whole city's underwater? What's going on? Like, and then
Yeah.
it sort of takes off in a more extreme direction, and I was just a little jarred by it. That was it. I mean, it wasn't like bad. I mean, I thought a lot of good stuff happened there. I thought the ending scene, the ending action scene, was probably the best one in the film, where he's taking out some copycats that had all joined in on whatever online cult the Riddler had sort of started, and they'd obviously set that up throughout the whole film, that he'd had this underground society sort of building. So I thought that was great. I thought him leading people to safety was probably a good lead in from that. What I mentioned earlier about Bruce being a more positive, more hopeful sort of figure rather than the dark, gloomy guy. So maybe that actually is the scene that gets him to be a more positive role model and figure in future films. So I did think the result of all of it was pretty good. I was just a little jarred by like how they got there for a moment. I was a little like, wait, what's going on? Like just
Yeah,
for a
I,
second.
I, I totally can see that too. Yeah, I totally agree there. Because that like I said, when I was watching, I was kind of like, I was like, what? They're flooding Gotham? I'm like, what? I'm like, this just seems odd. But just like you said, it's kind of a little jarring, and I agree. I completely agree there. I think it was a little bit. Kind of going and talking about the Riddler a little bit more there too.
Right.
That brought up a thought in my head is, throughout the film, like, I mean, we know the Riddler, he goes live and streams what he's doing to these bad guys, these people that he ends up killing. And that's one thing about this series too, about this film, is pretty much in any other Batman film, the villains usually never actually kill anybody. Like, they
Right.
injured people, but they don't kill anybody. And so that was kind of interesting in this, that the Riddler actually kills people. So I thought that was kind of darker in a way that they were going to. But this whole, like, online cult thing, that's really what I was want to get to here. Is, what was your thoughts on that? Because my thoughts, I was like, throughout the film, like, as I was getting to the point, we know he was a live streamer and he did that, but I had no idea that he actually had, like, this building this, like, army almost, or this cult. And so when they actually like reveal that after, Bruce ends up figuring out the puzzle and opens that video, and we find this all out that he's been this whole time video streaming to these people and collecting these people, getting them to follow his cause. I thought that was a really interesting kind of like take and like very neo noir type of introduction into this film. And also at the same time, it almost makes it like almost like serial killer vibes, like to me too. That's how it kind of felt like to me. So, what were your thoughts on that whole ordeal?
I'm glad you just mentioned that because you just made me like flash back to some older Batman films. So like the Schumacher films, for instance, where Joker or Penguin or Two-Face have this built-in army, and they're all dressed similarly and stuff. And if you go back and watch the Schumacher films, they're kind of fun, like they're goofy, campy fun, right? But you're all like, one of the things I was always like, where did he get these guys from? Like, who are these people? So I do actually think that's a really cool thing with how they've taken this series and perhaps a little bit in the Nolan series too, and then more recent Batman films, to make it understandable of how they wind up with these followers or these people. And actually, I think this is a pretty good way to do it. Like, you've got this. I almost wish they went into it more. Actually, he's got this online group of people who are following him and who are anti-corruption. And honestly, we were talking about this a little bit on our channel. Like, anti-government corruption is something that's become, maybe more of a thought in the past, 20 years or something like that, or longer, where it's people form groups. We've obviously gotten pop culture where people are very segmented. You've got this one thing that you're really focused on politically, and you can kind of see how he's built that through an online medium, where he's got these people on board with him and they're willing to join him in this cause that he's got. And you can see that it fits in. I think it works. I think it really does well. And I think it sort of mends that how did he get these followers sort of thing. I can see that happening. I really can. So I thought it was cool. I really did. I thought that part of it was cool, and I'm glad you mentioned that.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I when it popped up and that video was shown, like I said, in that whole little segment kind of talking about that kind of like those people following him. Yeah, like I said, I thought that was a really interesting idea. Like,
right.
Just like you were just mentioning how in the previous film, there's always kind of, they had these built-in armies. They already had these people working for them. This actually shows kind of how they got people to follow them. And
right.
I like that aspect. I thought that was really cool too as well, like you said. And I think that actually shows a little bit of a realism too, to make this differentiate itself too from the other films and
right.
other shows and stuff like that. That, that in real life, even there are people that get people to follow them. Look at Jeffrey Koresh. Look at the Jonestown. I mean, this is something that is actually factual and really happens. And so I thought that was cool that they tried to bring in that realism to this. And I thought that was a really good point. But overall, like, the whole concept of the Riddler's film was so different than anything we've seen before. Because in anything else, any other iterations I've seen of the Riddler, comic book wise or in films, he's always been kind of a jokester,
right?
Setting out riddles and not really like a threat or anything. He's more of just kind of like the comedy relief. I feel he kind of was kind of like how I feel they made the Joker a little bit too in most of the films too. Like, they're kind of this comedy relief that are supposed to be a villain, but really are they? Like, they're not really that evil as they make them out to be. Whereas in this, he actually is very evil. Like, he's like trying to do. Supposedly he's trying to do justice, but he's going about it the wrong way. Basically,
he's evil, but he does feel like a pretty normal guy who's gotten this motivation in his head that he's righteous and he's got the right idea. It's sort of different than the Heath Ledger Joker, right? Like, that guy was psychotic.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so this guy feels like I don't know, he feels like an IT guy who just decided one day that this was the right course of action. And he's not, I mean, there are scenes of him like being sort of psychotic, but it's different. It feels like more like he's he really feels like this is the right thing to do. He's not the Joker. I'm a crazy guy. I'm just gonna do, whatever. I'm just gonna create chaos and see what happens. It's not like that. It's like he feels like he's got this plan and it's the right thing to do, and he's gonna do it. He's gonna wash the city away of corruption, and this is gonna solve something. It's like it feels like in his mind he's got this thing that's gonna somehow solve everything, whatever that means to him.
Yeah. I kind of equivalent it to the Punisher. Because the Punisher, he himself is basically, he's like a vigilante, basically, is what the Riddler is in this film. He thinks that what he's doing is right because he's getting rid of the corruption, he's getting rid of what's wrong. And that's the same thing, very similar to the Punisher, is that he kills in order to protect, basically. And that's what I feel is what the Riddler's like in this film, which is a completely different take on the Riddler, which I thought was just really superb. And I mean, Dano played it to the T. He was so awesome as this character. I absolutely loved him. And I think, I mean, I'm a huge Paul Dano fan anyways. I absolutely love this guy. I think he's amazing in everything he's done. And so I was psyched when I found out he was playing the Riddler in this film, I remember. And that was my go-to. I was like, I'm seeing it. I don't care who else is in it. Dano's in this. I gotta see it. And I think he proved it very well, especially at the very end scenes where he's having the conversation with Bruce, and when he's locked up, and even when he has the conversation with the unfaced person that they show at the very end of the film that's supposed to be, aka the Joker.
Right.
To throw that out there a little bit, Barry Keoghan, who we all know from Killing of a Sacred Deer, who was in the Eternals recently. He's kind of jumped both places. He's been in Marvel, now he's in DC. This take on the Joker was interesting too. Even though they don't name him the Joker, we still know that he's supposed to be an iteration of it. Even though, because I know a lot of people, the Joaquin Phoenix film, The Joker, that came out in 2019, they're wondering where that's going to take place. And I remember a lot of people saying, oh, do we think that's in the same universe as this Joker? But it's not, as you can see. In this film, we got a whole new character, whole character that's supposed to be the Joker. What were your thoughts on when that scene popped up? Did you automatically think Joker? Did you, or did you think that was necessary? What were your thoughts on that?
All right. So, I mean, I'll be honest. I mean, I told you earlier, like, I was already a little Batmaned out. I mean, I'm not going to lie. I'm completely Jokered out. I don't give a fuck about the Joker right now. I don't. Please stop with the Joker. Just please stop. Please stop. Batman seriously has one of the largest rogues galleries in comic books. Like, him and Spider-Man. You can name off like 20 guys. Just do somebody else. Like, seriously, you've got like a ton of people that haven't even been on screen for him. And this goes to a larger point with DC. I'm not a super huge DC guy. I mean, I'll just tell you, like, there's been a lot of like good DC stuff that I've really enjoyed. I love the Nolan series. I really do. I can go back and watch the Schumacher series. I can go watch Batman '89 or Batman Returns or even Batman Forever right now. So it's not like I'm like, I won't watch DC or something like that, but just can we do something else other than the Joker, please? Just something else other than the Joker. I mean, and they have, honestly, they have. I mean, I thought they did a fantastic job with Scarecrow in the Nolan series. I thought he was awesome in Batman Begins. I thought he was great. And I thought they've done a great job including some more minor guys, like Falcone and Maroni and stuff like that. So I think they've got that, but I mean, nobody cared about Arnold Schwarzenegger freeze. Can we get a proper freeze in? Can we get like a Mad Hatter in? Can we get a proper Poison Ivy in? Stuff like that. I mean, I think they got a lot of stuff to get to before, and there's others too. I mean, some bigger Batman fans will be able to put me to shame in terms of other villains they could go to, but there's a lot of people they can get to before they go back to the Joker again. I like that they did the Riddler again. I really do. I think that was fine. I mean, Batman Forever did him, and I think Batman Forever is a fun film. It's obviously on the slightly more campy side, but I think it's fun, right? You can go back and watch it. This is clearly the technically better film, but I think you can go back and have a lot of fun watching Batman Forever, which without it being I don't ridiculous or anything, but I think it was fine to do a more serious Riddler. That's fine, but something else. Please don't do the Joker. Please don't do the Joker. Just move on. Move on.
Yeah,
I've
I
seen a lot
mean,
of Jokers.
yeah, I mean, I completely agree. I can see a lot of people feel that the Joker is stale because they pretty much every Batman movie has had some iteration or something pointing to the Joker.
Right.
And when they did do those other films, like when Nolan came in and decided to bring in the Scarecrow, that was awesome. Yeah, I
Right.
was so glad to see a new character.
He was so good, man. The Scarecrow was a character that, and I can name Marvel characters too that are like this. That I'm like, there's no way they could do the Scarecrow on screen. But Batman Begins, dude, they killed the Scarecrow, man. They killed Scarecrow. It was awesome.
And Cillian Murphy was a really good choice playing the character too as
He was
well.
amazing.
I think so. Cillian Murphy's another one of those actors that I equate to like Paul Dano. I think they're really good like character actors
Right.
that come in and they're not always the lead, but they always pull the show into them because they are just such good, talented actors. And I thought that that's what Cillian Murphy did with the Scarecrow in Batman Begins. I think that's probably one of my favorite things about Batman Begins was his character, and then Liam Neeson's Ra's al Ghul.
He was great.
And Ra's al Ghul is another character, that they could do so much with, and the only time we've seen him was when he was in Batman Begins so far. But like, yeah, I would love to see more characters too. Like, I know a lot of people keep saying they want to see Clayface, because we've seen Sandman by Marvel, so why not bring in Clayface? Which, with the technology they have these days, they can do it. We know they can do it.
Sure.
And so Clayface, I think, would be a great villain to see. Tombstone, all these different characters, in either side, Marvel or DC, it would be great to see these different characters. And, I think that they should definitely, as if they decide to do more Batman films, they need to explore more of these characters to give us more variety so that people don't feel like how you're feeling, stale because of just reusing the same characters over and over again. And with this Batman, I think it's been great that they brought in the Riddler and Penguin and gave him a complete different makeover basically, and give us these more serious, more different approaches than we've seen. And I think that was a fresh and good idea. Even though they packed this film with so many villains, I mean, between those two, having that little cameo of supposedly the Joker, having Falcone, we had all these, villains again in a one movie, but yet they did it cleverly, I thought. And I think they did a decent job with, not over emphasizing one villain over the other too in this film. And I thought that was a good approach.
No, you're totally right. You almost didn't know who you knew the main villain was Riddler, but like everybody had a part, which I thought was good. But going forward, like while we're thinking about this, and I kind of brought this up earlier. I mean, can you see, who can you see in a sequel, given the level of realism in the series, given the idea that Penguin is a gangster on the level of Falcone and Maroni? I mean, can you see him getting to umbrellas with different abilities? Can you see a Clayface? Can you see a Freeze? What could you see coming down the road in this series?
I mean, honestly, yeah, if you're very familiar with the comics and the different villains and so forth, I'm sure there are some out there that are more gangster-like, that didn't really have powers and stuff like that, that would be on more of a realistic scale. But I mean, if you think about it, a lot of these characters, like Solomon Grundy, which is very similar to the Hulk.
Right.
Tech's Not Dead in the comments here was talking about Solomon Grundy. He said Clayface too earlier, so hands out to you, Tech's Not Dead. These characters that have super abilities, how could you make them more realistic? Well, technically, you could get away with doing it and making it more realistic by having it say it was with Grundy. Let's just talk about Grundy here for a second. Like, he fell into a vat of acid and got turned into the Grundy, basically, is what his story is. He toxic waste once again. I mean, but in reality, they could say he had a bad Botox experience or something like that. You could go with, or some surgical procedure that he had done that got messed up, and maybe some of the drugs they gave him caused him to do that. I mean, there are ways of like writing and getting around that and making it more realistic. But on my personal thoughts, what I think about it, just go with what the original is. Do the toxic waste. Do however these characters have become villains. They don't have to be realistic. That's what comics, what these movies are about, is about fantasy. They're not supposed to be realistic. It is nice to see that sometimes, like what they've done with this Batman. But personally, I like to see this out of world craziness that they do, that they come up with these different superheroes, these different super villains and so forth. So I want to see Solomon Grundy 10 feet tall and beating up people and stuff like that. That would be nice. And I think that they have everything in their power to be able to do this. On if they want to go the same route as the Batman, I think they can do it. I think there's many options that they could pursue to make that more realistic if they wanted to.
So you don't think that this film has boxed in the series or their potential at all? Like, you think they can grow and get some of these characters in a way that fits in with what they've already started?
I think they can.
Okay.
I think they can. I definitely think. Because if you think about it, even though it's they try to go with a more realistic aspect in this film, still think about Catwoman. Catwoman says she has 9 lives in the film, and so how does that fit into reality? Except for yeah, I lived 9 years. Is what I mean? So I mean, I still think that there's potential with this, even though it seems to be on more of the realistic level. I still think they can switch things or alter things to make it fit into the dynamics of the rest of doing these other supervillains or superheroes that have special abilities. I definitely think so.
Okay. I don't know where to go, man. Like, was there any, I mean, is there any other part of the film that really particularly stood out to you that was a high point for you?
Let's see. To move it on. I mean, I guess there are. I think that there was that really interesting scene. How about the Alfred scene? When Bruce finds out that Alfred has lied to him, basically, he thinks that he's been lied to his whole life. And they have that conversation after Alfred has been, basically he's in the hospital after being blown up. Um, that scene there, I thought, was a really interesting dynamic between Alfred and Bruce themselves. I honestly thought that they did an interesting take there. Whereas, because I feel like in other, Batman films in the past and so forth, and TV series and stuff like that, Alfred has always been very much father figure. And in this, I feel they made it more like he's more like a guardian that Bruce kind of listens to, but really doesn't. And that's the kind of vibe I got from this one. So I thought they had a different take. But that scene there was really interesting because how they had them, interact and everything, and Bruce kind of coming to terms with things and kind of, saying to Alfred, I know this and that and blah, 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 but, I understand now. And, I'm sorry this happened to you, kind of such a thing. And, basically Alfred kind of explaining certain things to him that makes Bruce realize, he needs to change his thoughts too. I thought that was just a really awesome take and a really great scene. What were your thoughts on that scene?
I thought it was good. First of all, I like Alfred. Andy Serkis is amazing. Just in anything he's ever in. I think I've followed him since Lord of the Rings, and he's just awesome in everything he ever does. And I'm like really glad that he's gotten into acting as opposed to just the name's escaping me. Just casting to where he's like different characters like Kong or whatever, like to where he's different characters and he's actually himself on screen. So I think that's really cool that he's advanced his career that way. But motion capture.
That's it. Yep.
So no, I thought it was a great scene. What it reminds me of though, and this isn't going to be like a glowing critique of the film, but I feel like several times in this film, there's like a build up and then a kind of a, oh, okay, sort of moment. So there's this build up that the Waynes are dirty. And then that scene sort of just washes that away, that it was sort of it was something that they didn't intend. Like, so the build up, to be spoilery, is the build up is that the Waynes, this, had hired a gangster to kill somebody. But then Alfred just says, well, they didn't really mean to do that. He was just meant to go over there and talk to him, and he wound up killing them. So the Waynes are actually clean for the most part. This is just an unfortunate side effect of something that they had discussed. And you're just kind of like, oh, okay, so they're not really bad. But they built that up, is that the fact that they were. I mean, I don't know. Like, where I was going to with that is that I don't know, let's say with like the riddles, for instance, I don't know that they really led anywhere in particular. Like, there's that scene that I mentioned earlier about the like Batman confronting the joke, the Riddler in prison. The Riddler's like, you didn't figure it out yet. But the resolution to that, with him finding the carpet tool and, figuring out that there's this map and then this video, I didn't get, like, who would have figured that out? Like I didn't get the sense that, oh, this was a big, deep, clever riddle that Bruce would have ever figured out. Nobody would have figured that out. Like, it doesn't make any sense. Like, so I don't know. Like, while I think the film is really good and really well made, and I love the acting and the shooting and the visuals and stuff like that, there wasn't really a moment throughout the entire thing where I was like, yeah, like, there wasn't a fist pumping moment for me. So it kind of lingers on, all right, for me, sort of throughout the entire thing, if that makes sense. And this is a scene that the scene you're talking about with Alfred is one of those, because it's a great scene, it's good, it's solid, but I think it kind of leaves me with a, oh, okay, so the Waynes aren't dirty, or like completely dirty, sort of feeling that they'd set up. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, do you think that has to do with maybe the writing? Do you think that has to do with just that the story itself didn't progress properly? Do you think that might have played into why maybe you have that feeling?
No, it's different because it's not bad writing. And I define bad writing as stuff that just doesn't make any sense, right? Like, so everything makes sense. I just don't know that and this might be a personal thing. It just doesn't hit, like, there's nothing that I get to where it hits like a high point for me, or feeling of satisfaction where I get like oh, that was really good, or that, that really made sense, or that, that really was impactful or emotional or something. Like, nothing ever quite gets there for me, even though it's all good, if that makes sense. I can't really go through and be like, oh yeah, that was bad. There's films I could name, and I won't sit here, where stuff just doesn't make sense, and that this film doesn't have that problem. There's no problem with it or anything like that. I just don't really get like a high moment out of this film.
Gotcha. Yeah. That probably is. Does come down to purple impressive, because I have that feeling sometimes with other movies that people think that they're the greatest films in the world, and
Right.
I'll be watching it and be going, I don't see what you see. I'm sorry. I don't find that entertaining, or I don't find that amusing, or I don't get how that interconnects properly. And so I totally see that, and I totally agree there that I feel that is very much like just how sometimes we feel about things, and
Right.
that's fine. That's just an opinion. That's what it is, uh, and that's great. But basically, I mean, we're approaching an hour here. Maybe start getting ready to close out here, I guess. I mean, we pretty much talked about everything about this. What? How about as we close here? What do you think? Where can you see the future of this franchise yourself? Do you feel that? Do you feel it's boxed in? Because you asked me that before. So,
Right.
what are your thoughts on that? Do you think it's boxed in? Do you think they can proceed and make maybe some of these other villains we've been talking about into this series?
I don't know. I'm worried that it might be. The I mean, they kind of come off as trying to go super realistic here, and I think the Batman series as a whole has had to sort of fight this dilemma. Like, the entire reason you got the Nolan series, and by extension this series, as sort of more realistic takes, is because, as I mentioned in our review, they crossed the line the other direction with Batman and Robin. They got too campy, probably a little bit to extent maybe Batman Forever. They started to get a little too campy and they crossed the line the other direction and they decided to completely pull back and try to go to sort of realistic and grounded as a thing for the Batman. And I'm kind of wondering if maybe they need to edge back the other direction a little bit. Get back to like a Batman '89, a Batman Returns, where it's a little more fun, but it's surreal. It's something that you don't have to constantly be super dark and realistic about constantly, but you can just have fun with Batman. I don't know. I don't know if this series has set itself up to where it can get there. It does have exaggerated plots. I mean, I I almost want to say that having a flooded city is unrealistic, but then New Orleans. So I mean, sorry, things like that do happen. But I mean, can I see? I can't see a character like Clayface. I don't know how they would do a Poison Ivy. Can they do it? Yes. I'm having trouble envisioning it as I sit here right now. Are there other Batman characters they could do and try to keep it more realistic and slowly build up? I mean, if we remember, like the MCU started with somewhat realistic aspirations. Like, I mean, Thor's not realistic, but Iron Man. I mean, you can at least kind of see that happening. Like, there's technology in the world where that's beyond a little beyond what we can do, but it's not that far beyond what we can do. So you can sort of see that. Can they build on that in this series? Yeah, probably a little bit, but I don't know how far they can go. I also don't know. I mean, DC as a whole, we were talking about this, and we were looking at box office and where they're intending this, not this series, but the brand of DC to grow to. I don't know where they want to place this series. Like, are they intending to go for a trilogy here that's just completely independent of anything else they're doing, or do they want to kind of tie this into other stuff they're doing and try to kind of grow the brand as a whole? I don't know. I really don't know what Warner Brothers' idea is here. I don't know what their plan is. I feel like this is going to just be a completely independent series. This is going to get a sequel, I'm sure, and it'll probably get a third one after that because this is a good film and it's doing well. It's doing well at the box office. I'm not going to say it's doing exceedingly well, but it's doing well. And then I don't know.
Supposedly, it's on track to match Spider-Man: No Way Home.
I don't know, man.
They said that it just crossed 300 million statewide. Uh, Nationally, though, internationally, it's crossed almost the a billion mark already.
No, it's like 650 or something now.
Oh,
I think.
Is that what they said? The last article I saw one either today or yesterday. It was saying that it was close to the 1 billion mark. So
Okay.
it supposedly is gonna. They said they think it's gonna bank about as big as No Way Home, with how its track record is because it's still number one, and I think it'll even stay number one after Morbius comes out April 1st.
That's a curious film.
Yeah, because it's not getting good reviews. At FYI too.
Right. I saw that.
Once again, delays kill a movie. They kept delaying it and kept trying to redo things to it. But yeah, that's supposedly this is on track to be as big as No Way Home. So I think that's kind of interesting that it's doing that well. I mean that it's over 300 million here in the States,
Right.
but still, I mean close to a billion worldwide. I think that's pretty amazing for the what we're working with films these days. Especially
Sure.
with the whole pandemic and everything.
I'm actually really happy just now that you mentioned it to see films kind of sort of returning to normal-ish.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's the going to hold true for all most films, but I'm glad to see people in theaters and just out in general, which is great.
Yeah, I mean, when I went and saw this, the theater was actually fuller than it has been in a while, so that was nice to see, most definitely.
Right.
But Tech's not dead over here in the comments says go see X instead. Okay, the new X movie, which is a new horror film that just came out this past weekend.
I haven't seen this. But I'm a horror
Basic,
fan, so I should see it.
you should check out the trailer. Basically, it's about this group of people that are going to make a porn film, basically, and some craziness ensues while they're trying to film this adult film, basically. Um, so it's getting great reviews. I think it's currently 97% Ron Fresh, I believe. It's doing really good. It's got that Jenna Ortega in it, and uh, she's just been on a horror role recently. As you can see, she was just in Scream. She was in Babysitter Killer Queen. She's just been doing a lot of things like that. But yeah, hopefully it'll be nice to see what the Batman settles at for box office. It'll be interesting to see just how well it does. If it
Right.
does hit No Way Home's goal. I mean, we've mentioned this in the couple last past podcast live streams. That we think that Doctor Strange is going to definitely do that well, at least. Either and be almost like No Way Home or a little bit more.
Right.
I definitely think that Doctor Strange is going to have a huge opening. I'm interested to see what Doctor Strange's ticket sales are when they go on pre-sale,
Right.
to see how that does too. But overall, I think the Batman was a solid film. If you're gonna do out of stars, I gave it a 4 out of 5. Um, I think it's a decent film. I was really impressed with it. Like I said, I wasn't too sure about Pattinson. I thought he did a pretty decent job. Like you mentioned that too before. I mean, really, anything else about the film you can think of? Is there anything else you'd like to share?
I don't know. I mean, there's a couple specific things, but I don't want to like sit there and nitpick the thing. But it was
Nitpick.
enjoyable. What's that?
Nitpick, please. I want to hear these nitpicks.
Well, so I brought this up before, but I found it curious. So I'm just gonna mention Catwoman.
Okay.
So I found it curious when we got to her that I was thinking this during the film when I was watching it, and because I didn't quite know it was Zoe Kravitz when you first meet her, because Batman's tracking down this the DA, I think it was the previous DA, and this Lady of the Night, I'll just call her that. I don't know exactly what she was, but he saw a picture of her and she came out of this club, and so Batman goes to the club to track her down because he thinks maybe she has information on who this guy was or what he was doing or something. So he goes to her, and then Catwoman. I didn't know it was actually Catwoman for a second. This is the part that in the theater I was like, wait, is that Zoe Kravitz? So she's in the room during his private meeting with Penguin. So she's the waiter in there, and then the roommate of the girl he's actually looking for, and then also Catwoman, and then also the daughter of Falcone, who was like involved with his parents. I was like, there's a lot of conveniences here with this like chick. Like she was tied into a lot of stuff. Like I don't know, that's kind of how I was feeling the whole time. And also I didn't know how she was Catwoman, which maybe that doesn't matter. Like she's just Catwoman, that's fine. But like there's not like really an origin or whatever. I'd be kind of interested in that a little bit as to how she's a badass, but that I don't care about that. I just thought it was a little convenient with how we got Catwoman, but whatever.
I'd have to agree. I mean, yeah, when like all of a sudden as we go along throughout the movie, she's happens to be the roommate and supposedly lover of the lady of the night, we'll call her, like you
Right.
said. And then she happens to be the waitress, happens to be Falcone's daughter. You later find on.
Right,
You're just
right,
like
right.
they just kept adding on. I felt
Right.
every few like I don't know every portion of the film, and you're just like, what else are they gonna add on? She can fly now or something. That's how I felt about it. Eventually, I was like, what else are we gonna find out about this Catwoman?
Right.
So I mean, you could definitely see how different this Catwoman was from like any other DC creation that we've seen. So, I definitely think this Catwoman is definitely just encapsulated in this Batman world. Most definitely, I think.
Right, right. And again, I thought she was fine. I thought she did a great job, like Zoe Kravitz as a whole in this. I don't know where they go with it though. I really don't know. I don't know enough about, like, I can't see a Mr. Freeze coming out of this series right now as I sit here. I don't know if I can. I don't know if I can see that. But maybe they make a turn, like the Schumacher series took a mash. It wasn't an entire Schumacher series. Burton started off that series, But obviously, from Burton to Schumacher, it took a massive turn. I think Reeves is going to stay with us as far as I know, and I can't see him leaving. So I don't see the series taking a huge turn, but I mean, maybe he can work in some stuff that I'm not currently seeing. I don't know what that would be right now. I really don't. I don't know how he can get too far off the range, um, with realism that he's established here, and I don't know who would fit into a more realistic world. Not sure, but he could do it. I mean, there could be some things I'm not thinking of here. So I'm really curious what comes on about a sequel here.
Yeah, I mean the what I keep seeing is that Reeves himself has said that he would like to introduce Mister Freeze in the next one.
Really?
Yes.
How, how can
So
you see
I
him
don't
doing that?
know.
How
I
can,
I
can you
mean
see with a guy
Freeze.
with a freeze gun showing up here?
Well, well, like you said earlier, like with how the Iron Man, we're not that far off from the technology for like say Iron Man. Some of the things that they created in Iron Man. Okay,
Okay.
they could do the same principle with this. You know, making it somewhat realistic. Like maybe this guy he creates something that uses everyday things that we already have. Like, say he finds out a way to downsize a refrigerator, somehow, and he creates it into a gun or some laser of some sort that can freeze things.
Okay.
You know what I mean? I mean,
Yeah.
there you got to get very creative on it. You know what I mean? So, and that's what the writers do. So, I mean, I definitely feel that he could definitely pull it off if he wanted to. But if he decides to make that turn, like you were saying with like how Burton went to Schumacher, how that kind of made a turn, you know, even though you don't feel like you see a turn with this one, you never know. Because if a movie's successful, I mean, several films that have been super successful, and then the next film is completely different than what they made the first film
Right.
like, and like completely turns it. So who knows with the second Batman film? Matt Reeves could totally change his mind and go a different direction. We don't know. But
Could be.
like I said, I've seen in a few articles recently, he himself has said that he would like to introduce Mr. Freeze
Right.
into the series at some point. I don't know when, but he wants to introduce him. Uh, but that's the most recent villain I've seen them talk about, like as a next potential villain. They have said, and then of course we have the Penguin show coming out on HBO Max that they're gonna do. What are
That's
your
true
thoughts
too.
on that? Are you interested in that? Were you surprised by that? Is that something you want to see, or do you think that's unnecessary?
I'm a little surprised, but I mean, like I said in the meeting, full disclosure, I'm not going to be lining up for that. I'm very much a Marvel guy. I will watch DC stuff when it's really good, um, and I've been a big fan of several things they've done, but I don't really follow it too much. Some of that's the studio. I just don't have a lot of confidence in Warner Brothers to produce a consistent product. So I don't know. I don't have any plans to watch it, but I did really like Colin's portrayal. I'm curious, and I'll be keeping at least an ear out for what they're doing with this series, because it has the potential to get me on board. It does. I'm not like writing it off. I'm more curious what they're doing with it, and maybe that's a series that gets Penguin to a level that's a little, just an inch more fantastical, and that shows you, and maybe that's the series that shows you that this whole series can be a little more fantastical, and that you can suddenly go, oh yeah, they could do Mr. Freeze, yeah, oh yeah, they could do Poison Ivy, like, oh yeah, they could get a Nightwing in here, and maybe that starts to be where you get those characters in at.
Yeah, most definitely. And I even feel like even in this film, I think there's a little bit of fantastical elements in the film, anyways.
Okay.
I mean, look at Colin Farrell's performance as the Penguin, especially in that car chase scene when
Right.
he's laughing. I feel that's very kind of that line of that kind of satirical there, giving you a little bit of that kind of that feeling we've had from like the Schumacher and the Burton films. I feel that there is a little bit of that in this film. It's not just all serious. So I
Right.
feel like they could take what little they added to the film and expand on that.
Right.
And like you said, maybe they're gonna do that with that's what the Penguin show is gonna be. Basically to kind of introduce that type of feeling, that type of version of the film, so that they can maybe take that and apply it to the next film. So
Right.
maybe that's Warner's thought process right now to try to gain some traction. Maybe, who knows? Because I mean, they have that coming out. They also have the Catwoman movie coming out that's going to be on HBO Max, which has Brendan Fraser playing one of the main villains in it.
Now that's not
Um,
related to this, though, right?
no, I don't believe it's related to the Batman itself, but still, it's a DC. I think it's actually related to the TV series, I believe, if I'm correct, the CW series. I think it's
Okay.
supposed to be in the same universe as that, I
Brendan
think.
Fraser. I hadn't heard that guy for a while, man.
Yeah, he's playing Firefly.
It's funny. My wife and I just like put on just for no reason. Like we'll just put on random movies, and we started watching The Mummy 3 the other day, which I'd never ever seen. We'll just put on random stuff. We'll be like, oh, by the way, we've never seen this, and we'll just put it on. So we started watching that. It was funny.
I saw that in theaters, actually.
Did you really?
Yeah, I did. I did. I hated that they recasted Rachel Weisz.
Right.
I hated
Right.
that. I mean, Maria Bello, she's an okay actress, but she didn't look anything like Rachel Weisz. So I was
No,
like, why did you change her into this person? Like,
I love
she
Rachel
doesn't
Weisz.
look anything like Evie. But at least Brendan Fraser came back. John Hannah came back for that one. I thought it was interesting they decided to bring in a Asian mummy,
Ooh,
with
yes.
Jet Li, and I thought that was kind of unique. I mean, that film could have been hugely potentially really good for them, but
Right.
once again, they kind of like screwed that one up too,
Right.
because the first two were really fantastically done, both by Stephen Sommers. This one was not directed by Stephen Sommers, and I think that's probably why it wasn't as good. And then just the direction of not Rachel Weisz not coming back either. I think they should either had her die off or not have just not have the character be up, like they reference to her but they don't need to show her. I think that's the route they should have took, in my opinion, so that you can keep it in context the greatness that Rachel Weisz brought to the character, but at the same time you can show honor to her by not doing what they did with Maria Bello.
Yeah,
um,
I don't. I never. She was interesting. It was clearly not Rich Weisz, but I'm never usually too. I'm fine with recasts because I get stuff happens, right, and in the real world, and this is the same character. I can understand that I'm watching the same character. So I did like what they did with her introduction though, where they were in a class and they were talking about. I realize we're way off topic, by the way, and they were talking about a story, and the way they introduced the character is to have her look up, as in the class they're talking about the story, and her finishing line for what the student in the class was talking about was for her to look up and say, and she's a completely different character, and it's a new actress playing the same role. I thought that was a pretty cool line to bring in,
yeah.
to bring in a new actress. But yeah, I probably for that movie, I think the biggest issue with that, aside from directing, was that you knew what was happening. It's the same story.
Yeah.
You get it. Like we know what's happening with a mummy movie,
Yeah.
so
Yeah. 100%.
not really too surprising.
Yeah. 100%. 100%. Anyways, all right. Anything else? Anybody? Anything else? I feel like this is a great conclusion spot there. You have any other thoughts, Arch? Anything else to say?
No, I think we've covered it. I mean, I think so. I could always like find little stuff, but I think I think we've pretty much summed it up.
All right. Awesome. Awesome. Well, I want to thank you for being here tonight, Mr. Arch. It's always
Yes,
great
sir.
to have you on. Of course, you can find Mr. Arch on, of course, the awesome podcast of champions, SakarFreeforms.net, which is always a great place. And we always enjoy having him on here. He's always, a great guest to have, as usual. And I always enjoy having him on. And this was a great little different interaction here, just me and him hanging out, talking about the Batman. This is really fun, just going off the whim and stuff like that. A little different for you guys on the MCU's Bleeding Edge that are watching, And we hope you enjoyed. Is there anything you would like to plug or talk about before we sign off, Mr. Arch?
Just the site, so sakar.freeforums.net. We welcome anybody to come just check us out, hang out. We've got a ton of topics. It's it's a big Marvel forum, DC, Star Wars, Star Trek, whatever you want to talk about. We've got a ton of stuff there. And also we do our own show a little bit. So if you're a member of the site, you're welcome to come on and talk to us directly. at any point about basically any topic we've got going. You can come in, you can suggest a topic, and we'll get on and we'll all talk about it together. So we have a good time there. So we welcome you, sakara.freeforums.net.
Heck yeah, people. Love Sakar. Sakar is awesome. And so is the Podcast of Champions, people. If you haven't checked them out, definitely check them out on YouTube. They got some great stuff. They just recently did their Batman review, so check that out too as well. And Arch himself actually has a little new series that he's doing on there with his brother, where they're reviewing films as they watch them, having a little cookout and all that kind of cool stuff. So definitely check that out too. I love that. I loved it. I watched it and I couldn't get enough of it. I can't wait for you guys' next episode. It was really fun.
Good. I'm glad you had a good time. We should be filming that this weekend, by the way. It's been a little delayed for a couple of reasons, but we should be filming that this weekend.
Nice. And as always, people, if you enjoy me here on the MCU Blend, you can definitely check out my solo content as well. You can find me on TikTok, Rizzle, YouTube, all that kind of stuff under Cyberneticshark. Definitely go check that out. Check out my solo stuff. I will have my own personal The Batman review coming up very shortly soon on my YouTube channel, so definitely check that out too as well. And I hope you guys have a great night. This was a great little review, and we'll talk to you guys in another time. See you later. And we're still going to be live.
We're still live.
Yeah, we're still live. We're still live. Unfortunately, until he stops it, it's just going to keep running.
So Jeff has to stop it?
Yeah, Jeff has to stop it, yeah. So
Jeff
all we can do,
out,
all we can do is just leave the studio and then it'll stop. I don't know if it'll stop it if we leave the studio. I'm not sure, but it's still running. But so people listening, hi.
All right. Hey, well, good talking to you, buddy. Really, seriously, I'm actually glad we had a little one-on-one, but this has been fun.
Yeah, this has been fun.
All right, dude.
So you have a great night, sir.
You too, man.
All right. See you later.
I'll catch you later, Cyber.
Late. Hello, people still out there. You still here? Don't forget to check out my website, Cyberneticshark. Check it out. Facebook too as well. See you later, guys. Well, this is weird. Thanks, Tech's not dead. Yes, it is weird. Very weird, people. Jeffrey only has control